Well, they asked me to do a program on Abbeville, France, or I offered to do it. I did this many years ago for the Vermilion Historical Society. I haven't had a chance to update it for the tax season, but I went through it the last couple of days, and I still think this is going to be interesting, even to the people who have been to Abbeville, France. How many people have been to Abbeville, France?
Wow.
Gee, good group.
Can y'all hear the story in the back?
Yes.
No? If you could talk into the mic. Lloyd.
Okay. Well, Abbeville, France was founded in 1184. It was the capital of the maritime Picardy region of France. Abbeville is located on the banks of the Somme River, about 12 miles from its mouth in the English Channel and 28 miles northwest of Amiens. This gives you the location of Abbeville. Amiens is in the very right-hand bottom corner, and it's about, what, 2 hours from Paris? Does that sound about right?
That's an idea.
90-minute train ride.
Abbeville, France first appeared in the 9th century. It originated as Habitas Villa, named by the Romans. Abbeville first appears in history during the 9th century. At that time, belonging to the Abbey of Saint-Riquier, the town had become a fortress for the defense of the mouth of the Somme. In 1184, the town was granted a charter. Sorry. It got occupied by the French and the English for many years. It came into possession of the Alençon and other French families, and afterwards into the House of Castile, from whom by marriage it fell in 1272 to King Edward I. He ruled from 1272 to 1307, and it stayed under English rule for 200 years. It was the chief town of the region in Picardy. French and English ruled the region by turns until 1435, when by the Treaty of Arras it was ceded to the Duke of Burgundy. In 1477 it was annexed by the King Louis XI of France. It later grew into an important industrial and commercial city. Sorry. It was part of the 100 Years' War from 1337 to 1435. In 1435, the last battle of the 100 Years' War took place just north of Abbeville. Now there's a 15th century soap opera. In 1476, Louis, who ruled from 1462, or lived from 1462 to 1515, was required to marry the pious but disabled Jean of France, the daughter of his second cousin, Louis XI, King of France. After Louis's predecessor, Charles VIII, King of France, died childless. This marriage was annulled in order to allow Louis to marry Charles's widow, Anne of Brittany, the heiress and daughter of Francis I of Brittany, and a strategy meant to ally the French monarchy with Brittany. After Anne's death, Louis married Mary Tudor I, sister of then King Henry VIII of England. Evidently, these types of things were not uncommon. It was the site of Louis XII's marriage. Louis XII, who was 52, married Mary Tudor I. She was only 18, and they were married in Abbeville, France, on October 9th, 1514, in an attempt to conceive an heir to his throne, but it was unsuccessful. Louis XII died New Year's Day in 1515 after just 3 months of marriage. The Church of Saint-Rofran was an ever-present landmark. Construction began in 1488. It was interrupted in 1539 for the lack of adequate resources, and work continued in 1661 to 1663. The author Victor Hugo wrote, "The sight of the sun setting behind the towers is a reason to cherish the past." This is a picture of Saint-Rofran. The original design was not completed, but the facade is a magnificent specimen of the flamboyant Gothic style, flanked by 2 towers. The beautiful door panels were carved in the 16th century. It sustained some damages in World War II, although it was somewhat spared. This is a picture of the front of Saint-Maufrin and the towers that are at the very top of the towers. Here's an illustration of Abbeville, France from 1680. It appeared in a book of illustrations at the New Orleans Cabildo during the 1984 Sun King exhibit of French Louis the 14th. A copy was obtained from the French Cultural Office. Now this book that had all these illustrations, the pages were turned every other day so that they weren't exposed to the sun. If I hadn't been at the Cabildo that day, I wouldn't have seen this illustration. And I was able to obtain it from, like, it's the French Cultural Office. I gave a copy to Brady. I think he may still have it. And here's a bigger picture of, in fact, you can see, let's see. Right up here are the ramparts of the original fort that was built for Abbeville, France, to protect the Somme River. Industry and literary visitors. Abbeville was fairly important in the 18th century when Van Robes Royal manufacture, one of the first major factories in France, brought great prosperity to the town. There was sugar refinery, brewing, ironworking, and carpet manufacturing are the chief industries. The authors Voltaire, Victor Hugo, who wrote Les Miserables and Hunchback of Notre Dame, Jules Verne and Degas are among the famous authors and artists who visited Abbeville and the nearby Saint Valery on the Somme River. Now from Abbeville, France to South Carolina. This was Abbeville, South Carolina was founded in 1785 in an area settled 30 years before by French Protestants. Abbeville, South Carolina was named by Dr. John Howe for his native town of Abbeville, France. Known as the cradle and grave of the Confederacy because the secession meeting occurred here in 1860, and in 1865 Jefferson Davis held his final cabinet meeting where it was agreed to stop the war and dissolve the Confederacy. Early artifacts in 1840s. It was in the Somme Valley near Abbeville that Jacques Boucher Perthes unearthed artifacts in 1844 attesting to early occupation of the site. He thus founded prehistoric studies. These crude hand axe pieces were determined to be over 500,000 years old and at the very beginning of the Stone Age. Abbevilian is a term once used for the earliest stage of the tool industry in Western Europe, named for the site on the Somme River near Abbeville, France. Now, here's where it gets interesting as far as Abbeville, Louisiana. There's a booklet that documents that our founder, Father Migray, was actually from Abbeville, France. Evidence was found that verifies that the 1843 founder of Abbeville was originally from Abbeville, France. This pamphlet was obtained from the Hébert publications written by Sister Mary Therese McCarty in French and translated by Father Hébert. It opens as follows. On 14 October 1995, before 7 o'clock in the morning, the telephone rings in my room in New Jersey. In France, it is already time for a siesta. Father Jean Desaubry had discovered in the diocesan archives of Amiens the dossier of Father Antoine Jacques Désiré Migray, who was born on 23 May 1794 at Abbeville in the department of Somme and was to become the founder of Abbeville in Louisiana. This is, that's the pamphlet, but that's available if you're ever interested in reading it. It's available at the museum downtown for reading and for sale. In 1908, the Tour de France bicycle race went through Abbeville. The population in 1901 of Abbeville, France was 18,519 people. It served a very important part in World War I, the Great War. For much of the First World War, Abbeville was headquarters of the Commonwealth Lines, a location of stationary hospitals, and an Allied POW camp from October 1914 to January 1920. These are some pictures of the soldiers in the trenches. It was not a pleasant, World War I was not pleasant, especially in the trenches. Here's a picture of King George IV from Great Britain inspecting representatives of the South African Native Labor Corps in Abbeville on July 10, 1917. This will give you an idea of where Abbeville is and the stretch of where the World War I trenches were between France and Belgium and Germany. On May 2nd, 1918, an agreement was reached in Abbeville, France for the United States to enter World War I. Shown at the far left is General John Pershing. A postcard was picked up on the field of battle by a British soldier. It was dated 11/10/1918. Dear Elise, I am sending you a few postcards that I got off of Fritz. That's what they named the Germans. This postcard is a view of the town in France, but Fritz has paid particular attention to it with his bombing planes, and the town looks a lot different now. I'm quite well. I hope you and little Elise are well. With fondest love from your loving husband, Albert. His last name was Carter. And this was a postcard of the hospital that is seen on the river. Near Abbeville, France, is shortly after World War I was, in 1920, was the cemetery of the World War II casualties, World War I casualties. Aftermath of the World War to end all wars. If you look at it, the total mobilized was 65 million people, killed 8.5 million, wounded 21 million, missing 8 million, and total casualties were 37.5 million. In the United States, we sent over 4,355,000 soldiers, 126,000 of them were killed, 234 were wounded, only 45 were missing, but the total casualties was 364,800. These are early images of Abbeville, and they have a series of postcards from this era. This is the boulevard. This was a statue to honor one of their heroes from the exploits in the 1860s and during the little-known Sino-French War with China. France attacked Taiwan in 1884 because of a dispute with the Qing Imperial Court over Vietnamese territory. Here's another postcard at the center of town. And more postcards. This is a station, the avenue that leads up to the train station, which still exists today. It doesn't look much different than this, but that's a train station. The Rue du Hotel de Ville, which is the city hall. This is a building that still exists today. It did not get damaged during World War II. St. Giles Church was built between 1485 and 1528. This is the Talent Bridge restored after World War I. The maritime port near Abbeville. And here's an aerial picture of Abbeville. Some pictures of Saint-Refrain. Another side story, there's an artist, Frank Will. He was a French artist from 1900 to 1950. He did watercolor paintings prior to World War II. The Church of Saint-Refrain was one of the paintings he did in Abbeville, France. It was purchased prior to World War II at a Paris gallery by Father Edmund Dahl, who was a pastor at St. Mary Magdalene from 1930 to 1949. He was good friends with my great-grandparents, and they inherited the paintings. Some of the paintings are of Frank Will are in the diocese office, and some of them are in St. Mary Magdalene, and then some of them are owned by members of my family. This is the painting of Saint Bertrand. It's pretty nice to see in person. But what he did is he sketched it with a pencil, and then he used watercolor, and if anybody's an artist, watercolor is not easy, from what I can tell. And Miss Sylvia? World War II Anglo-French War Council. The Anglo-French Supreme War Council first met in Abbeville, France on September 12, 1939. On May 10th to June 22nd, there was a German blitzkrieg. I mean, Germany invaded France, and this will give you an idea of how they came in through Abbeville, France, onto Boulogne and Calais. One of the things I read is they were so unhindered by the French army that they filled up their vehicles at local gas stations on the way to Abbeville. Abbeville was exposed to the ravages of modern warfare. The city was very picturesque until the early days of World War II, when it was bombed mostly into rubble in one night by the Germans. The town overall is now mostly modern and rebuilt, although they rebuilt some of the things with the old bricks, so they sort of look like old buildings even though they're more modern. During the early part of the Second World War, Abbeville was a major operational aerodrome. The French army, retreating from the Germans' armored divisions, made a stand here. The Germans responded with a brutal attack with dive bombers destroying 2,000 houses and killing or wounding hundreds of people, and the entire town was set ablaze. The Germans entered Abbeville in 1940 and occupied it. On May 20th, 1940, the Germans entered the city of Abbeville. On June 4th, an attempt was made by the 51st Division in conjunction with the French to break the German bridgehead, but without success. A Panzer Corps went on to strike from Abbeville towards Boulogne, Calais, and Dunkirk along the Channel coast. The evacuation of Dunkirk ended on June 3rd, 1940. These are the Germans in Abbeville after the destruction. This will give you another idea of the invasion of France from May 10th to June 22nd. The strength was 44 divisions, several guns, tanks, aircraft, and there was 401 dead or wounded. 1.9 million French were captured. In World War II, Germans occupied Abbeville, and they conscripted many people in Abbeville for work, being on work details. One of the people we met from Abbeville, the only reason he wasn't conscripted is he had polio. He was still able to walk, but one of his legs was weakened, so they didn't find him suitable. The Abbeville Boys of Germany. The German Luftwaffe JG-26, nicknamed the Abbeville Boys, flew out of Abbeville off and on from 1940 until 1944. Abbeville in northern France was picked as their main base to operate from to defend that section of the French coast. After the Battle of Britain, most of the German Luftwaffe formations were withdrawn, leaving the JG-26 as one of the two German single-seat fighter units to defend in the West. You know, may remember The Longest Day. There's a scene with two planes, and they're instructed to go and attack the invasion, and they shoot a little bit and then go home. Here's a painting of the German Luftwaffe Abbeville Boys, Messerschmitts. Abbeville was part of the Allied escape line. One of the many heroes of the French resistance, Father Pierre Carpentier, printed false identity papers on his own press to help downed Allied pilots and soldiers escape through Spain. He was arrested on December 8, 1941 by the Gestapo, and he was executed on June 29, 1943. Don't mean to offend anybody, but he was beheaded. That's how they executed him. Today, there's a plaque outside St. Giles to dedicate to his memory. There's also V1 weapon sites near Abbeville. So they got bombed by the Germans, and then they also got bombed by the Allies. Precision bombing wasn't exact, and the V1 rocket launchers were just north of Abbeville, and in the process of hitting the V1 sites, they also hit Abbeville, France. Towards the end of 1943, 8 large ski-shaped structures appeared near Abbeville. These proved to be storage and support units for the flying bomb components. The available evidence by late 1943 indicated beyond a shadow of a doubt that the ski runs would have to be bombed to halt the Germans' reign of terror against English cities. Bomber Command first took the offensive in December when they attacked V1 sites near Abbeville. Even the Memphis Belle was one of the planes that bombed near Abbeville, France. And here I found an aerial photography of from one of the B-17s where they bombed that area. Abbeville was liberated by Allied troops. On September 3rd, 1944, Canadian and Polish forces liberated Abbeville, France. I got these images from the Vermilion Parish Library. Now, the aftermath of World War II damage, you can tell, yeah, there's a lot of rubble. The church still stands, but it was damaged. Here's some other pictures of, I can't believe it. But a lot of the town was destroyed. More pictures of rubble. Although St. Jacques Church in Abbeville, France has a similar construction to St. Mary Magdalene, Abbeville, Louisiana, there is no documentation that our church design was influenced by the other. Unfortunately, St. Jacques was demolished in 2013. It's no longer standing. There's another picture of the rubble. And here is a map. All the parts in red were destroyed. So the center of the town was hit the hardest. And again, what impressed me when we went to visit is a lot of the buildings that were rebuilt were built with the bricks that were there before. And consequently, some of the buildings don't look that young. In 1969, while on a tour through Europe, 19 students of Abbeville, Louisiana visited Abbeville, France on July 18th, 1969, arranged by the 2 Abbeville Rotary Clubs, Abbeville, Louisiana and Abbeville, France. Dan D'Ortez was our counselor at the time, and it was Mother Mary Grace who arranged the trip. I don't know if any, from Mount Carmel, many of y'all remember Mother Mary Grace.
Hey Lloyd, which one is you?
Which one's me? I'm front row bottom. I'm the one that's squinting. And we came back from Abbeville, France, and gave a report to the Abbeville, Louisiana Rotary Club on 9/17/69, and it was presented by our chaperone, Dan D'Ortez, Leah LeBlanc, who is Polly LeBlanc's daughter, myself on the recent trip. Charles Thompson was the Rotary Club president from 69 to 70, but the ARC president from 68-69, when this trip was arranged, was Russell Gospire. He was clerk of court for many years. The Cathedral of Saint-Bertrand was rededicated on 9/18/1999, nearly 60 years after it was damaged by World War II, and I've got some pictures of the restoration which y'all may find interesting. It was very well done. It's a beautiful church. In May 2001, the Somme River overflowed its banks and flooded many parts of Abbeville, France. Some 3,000 homes had been underwater for over a month. 1,000 people had been evacuated and hundreds were sheltering with their relations. That's the, train station right there.
Sounds familiar.
Lloyd, it wasn't rain that,
No,
it was, it
came from the Somme?
yeah.
Yeah. Here's a picture of the train station with the water in front of it. And gives you an idea of the flooding that took place. Abbeville is an important local administrative and service center and is serviced by major motorways. Industry is limited but includes food processing and metal goods manufacture. Its population in 2001 was 25,439. This is a postcard from modern Abbeville, France. And one of the structures they had that survived the war was one of the oldest belfries in France from 1209. It holds a local museum. And it was restored. And there's Saint-Bertrand. There's a train station. Y'all remember it?
Oh, to walk over, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was telling you about.
Here's St. Jacques Church again. Of course, that was demolished. St. Giles Church was restored. And this is their Hotel de Ville, their city hall. And the center court, or center part of the town, it doesn't have two squares like we do. So it was just something that they came from France. Here's a poster from Abbeville, France. And to give you an idea of other Abbevilles, Abbeville, Louisiana was founded in 1843. Our population was 11,683. Founded by Father Antoine Maigret. Abbeville, South Carolina was founded in 1785, has a population of around 6,000. Again, it was named by Dr. John Howell for his native town in Abbeville, France. Abbeville, Alabama was founded prior to 1833, has a population of about 3,000. It's named after Indian translation of the area name Yada Abba, Grove of Dogwoods. Then there's an Abbeville, Ohio, which was founded in 1842. It was a log cabin built by Medina County Roman Catholics. Then there's Abbeville, Mississippi, which was founded in 1845, population of about 400 or 500 people, but it was settled by the people from families from Abbeville, South Carolina. And then there's Abbeville, Georgia, which was founded in 1858, population about 2,200. And it was named for Abby Fitzgerald by the husband who donated the land for the Wilcox County Courthouse. Two stories I'd like to relate to y'all. When I gave this program many years ago, y'all may remember Margaret Steen Velmez, and she told the story and said it's perfectly true. Now, in 1940, when the French invaded France, you got to remember that newspapers weren't daily. They weren't available very often. And most people got their news from radio. Well, at some point, the Delcombe Bridge was closed and the traffic was backing up. So someone went to go check on him, and the guy who manned the bridge heard on the radio that the Germans were headed for Abbeville. and he told his supervisor, they're not gonna do it on my watch. Now, as unusual as that sounds, it's not out of possibility that the Germans could have launched an attack, you know, from our coast, but that didn't happen. But now when I say we, my daughter Laura and I and my wife Susan, we all went to Abbeville, France, and we hosted the family from Abbeville, France. And there's a picture, we were at Antoine's, let's see, that would have been in August of 2006, which was roughly a year after Katrina, and Antoine's had just basically opened. Yeah. And their favorite part was the baked Alaska. And they were Patrick and Brigitte Bousquet and their daughter. And I hope y'all found it interesting, but I'm sure there's people here that can give us some stories.
You left one thing that should fit in here, and you were part of it. After the flood, the Rotary Club raised over $1,000, $1,500 to present to the school over there in Abbeville that was flooded, and I wanted to bring that
Yeah.
to the Rotary Club.
I forgot to mention that. Anybody else want to share some stories about their trip to Abbeville, France? It's a lovely town, and I highly recommend if you ever get to go there to France to try to make it to Abbeville. It's a little off the beaten path, but it's worth the visit.
Between Paris and Cali.
I'll share a story. First time we went over there was with the Abbeville people, and Abbeville is becoming a sister city of Abbeville, France. And our plane was delayed, and they had a luncheon prepared for us. And we missed our flight, we had to go to the second flight, and we got there about dinner, this evening meal, and then lunch was all prepared. And the second time we went over there, we said we better not go on a plane, we got delayed, let's go on a bus. So we went on a bus, and when we got there, we was about 3 hours late. So I told the story I was the lead of the group. I told the story, I'm sorry we're late. The first time we came here, we came on a plane and we was 8 hours late. The next time we went on a bus and we were 4 hours late. Next time we're gonna walk.
Thank you, Mr. G.
Lloyd, the mayor, when we went,
Yeah,
you remember they took us around.
yes, he did.
And the one who took me around was the mayor. His
Mhm.
name was Jean Dupuis. And he, for some reason, has some kind of contact with Abbeville LeBlanc,
Okay.
the cousin Dud. And he took us around, and it was so, I guess I didn't know that much history. I was pretty young then. And he showed us where the Germans were for 3 years, and the bombing that took place, and turned around on the street, he said, you see this corner right there? He says, one morning after the bombing, I found my mother dead, right? Then he goes out 3 or 4 blocks, same thing, he says, in that house is where I found my brother. And I said, man, it was bombing,
Yeah.
it was dead. And I said, wow, I said, the Germans were, no, he says, it's the American that bombed. I don't know, I had a feeling that, how in the world that happened? And it's like, I didn't know the history of it.
Yeah.
But no, he said that was a good thing. And then about 7 or 8 years later, I'm teaching at Abbeville High, Cecil P. Carter is the principal, and he calls me out of, around. I said, well, at the time, we had to always ask people to take care of the kids. No, he said, leave the kids alone, come on. What the hell did I do now? So when I walked in his office, that was Mr. Jean Dupuis and his wife.
Yeah.
And he spent 2 days in Abbeville. I think, who was it, the senator,
Fred?
who, just slipped my mind right now. No, it was, he was a lawyer,
James Fontenot?
James Fontenot had a contact with them, and he brought him to me, he says, can you take him for 2 days? I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, he was quite a guy.
Yeah. Born in San.
Jean Dupuis.
And they didn't blame the United States for the destruction because we were trying to hurt the Germans, so they understood. The family that we stayed with, one of the Mr. Bousquet, the elder, two things that I remember from him is he served us champagne. And his comment, he said it, of course, in French, and I didn't understand. I had to have it translated, but he says, "There's another one the Germans won't get." And in fact, he built a house or a vacation spot along the coast, but it was on top of one of the German bunkers, which he was very proud of. But, now, Mrs. Bousquet, her family from the south of France, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the Marquis, they fought for the resistance. But a couple of her brothers were captured and killed or executed. But a couple of them lived. But a lot of people in Abbeville asked their young sons to go into the hills so that they wouldn't be conscripted. Okay, thank you.
Big round of applause, our own Mr. Lloyd Dore.